come in. Oh, sorry. I think we're going to let everybody come in. We don't have to be so stuffy and professional. We want people to hear the message. Ah, wonderful. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, my name is Jessica Tate. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the Sustainable Transportation Manager at Indigenous Clean Energy, and I primarily run the REPWR program, which is a funding program for charging infrastructure. And I'm also working now on an education awareness program called ZEVs Across the Land. But I'm very pleased today to be joined, and forgive me, to be joined today by two very special guests. We have Emilie Fargeout from Earth Day Canada's Charge for Change program, and Zachary McCue, who is the founder and CEO of REPWR, and who has actually completed 2 projects, Charge Up. So I want to thank them both. Thank you both for joining us today. Before we I want to give you an opportunity to actually introduce yourselves. But before I do that, I do want to just kind of start off part of the reason why I think EV charging, looking at EV charging right now is so important. And that's something that I think not a lot of people are really very familiar with. It's not so much common knowledge. And that is the electric vehicle availability standard. This is something that has been put out by the federal government. And the standard requires all new light-duty vehicle sales to be electric or plug-in hybrid by 2035. So I know some of us hear that number occasionally, like you hear it kind of in the background, but maybe haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what that really means. We're quite accustomed to considering ourselves as consumers as having options, but really this is going to be a standard that restricts our choice of what we can purchase, because manufacturers and importers will only be really allowed to sell certain vehicles to us. Each year, that number's, welcome, that number is going to increase. And so I think it's so important for each of us to be, at the very least, learning about these, learning about charging, learning about what this transition is going to mean for us, especially when you kind of consider running a business, you're leading your community, your nation, or if you're just, you're a community member and you're talking to your community leaders and thinking ahead about what you definitely will be needing in the future, even if you're not quite ready now. So with that, I just wanted to kind of set that out as a consideration to begin our conversation. But I would like to invite our guests to do a bit more of an introduction for themselves. Emilie, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. First, I wanted to say how grateful I am to be here with you today to talk about the Charge for Change program. And I wanted to thank Jessica for inviting me to be here today. Yeah, my name is Emilie Fargeout. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a Canadian settler from France, and I live here in Toronto. I've always enjoyed spending time in the outdoors, in nature. And I felt like a few years ago, I felt like I needed to do more and, protect that environment that is being threatened with climate change. And so I joined Earth Day Canada, and I'm a project manager there. I manage the Charge for Change program, and yeah, that's why I'm here today to tell you more about the program.
Thank you. Zach?
Good morning, everyone. Zach McCue, founder, CEO of REPWR. We're an energy provider or an energy company. REPWR manufactures a proprietary solar module that rapidly installs on shipping containers, allowing us to create mobile solar farms on tops of container ships, trains, and trucks to power those vehicles and vessels in part by solar instead of being so reliant on fossil fuels. I guess the catalyst for being here on this panel is we've been successful in deploying 2 charge-up programs not only is it an environmental case because you're not doing greenhouse gas emissions and so on and so forth running conventional internal combustion engine vehicles. I've got an F-150 Lightning, and I'm sure there are a number of people that know that F-150 platform and how expensive it is to fill up a truck at the pump right now. You know, you're looking probably anywhere between $125 to $200 depending on the size of your fuel tank. That F-150 Lightning cost me $15 to fill up at home or at our facility. So not only is it a great avenue for climate change, but I think it also makes great business sense as well.
Thank you for sharing a little bit about the motivations there. I'm wondering, Emilie, can you share a little bit of the motivations for the Charged for Change program? You know, why was this program created, and what are you hoping to produce out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, the Charge for Change program is a program that is presented by the insurance company Aviva Canada and the nonprofit Earth Day Canada. And the program was actually born out of the knowledge that the availability of charging infrastructure is a deciding factor for Canadians considering the purchase of an EV. And as Jessica just mentioned, there is like a clock running for that. But we also know that the infrastructure required can be cost prohibitive for many communities. And while the Canadian government has put in place financial assistance programs, new funding opportunities are always welcome. And Aviva Canada wanted to play a part in this by supporting communities in the transition to EVs to fight climate change and help create a more sustainable world. Earth Day Canada is a national nonprofit whose mission is to support individuals, local governments, and organizations reduce their ecological footprint. And we do that through programs in various fields, including sustainable mobility. So we know that a large portion of greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation, and we're delighted to be able to support Aviva Canada with their ambition through the Charge for Change program. And more so with like what I just said, the program is also made to serve the communities themselves and their residents. We hear about like the differences between the level 3s and level 2 chargers. The program right now is for level 2 chargers, but those chargers are implemented at the heart of the communities to support the residents of those communities as well.
Thank you so much. Yes, so you're touching on a point actually that I think is very important to talk about the level 2 chargers and the desire for different type of charging. So this is one of the biggest questions that I get in my role is, you know, what type of charging should we be considering? You know, every single community, every single business has different needs, and you want to make sure these are big investments, not only in financial investments, but in your time, in your energy. They will impact all of the down the road, no pun intended, outcomes, right? And so I know, Zach, you have completed 2 projects now, but you had to think quite carefully about what type of charging you might need for each different scenario. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about your project development and planning.
Yeah. I guess maybe conventional thinking is go out, biggest charger you can possibly get, spend the money, and make it work. And yes, that will work. But if we look at the program or your, call it build cycle or development cycle, that's an incredibly wasteful way of going about it. One, in terms of financial, because a level 3 charger is an order of magnitude more expensive than a level 2 charger.
Mm-hmm.
And the question I need to charge a vehicle in 90 minutes? Is that paramount to how my business operates? We've got a number of electric vehicles in our fleet that manage distribution and logistics for us. And we don't need a level 3 for our operations, because when we're doing a shipment or picking up materials, really the furthest we're going is Toronto, so give or take 200 kilometers each way. Oakville, I guess, is the furthest that we go, so a little bit further than that. But an F-150 Lightning has a range of about 500 kilometers regardless. And we're really only doing 1 or 2 trips a day, sometimes into the Peterborough area, which is 30, 40 kilometers. So that allows us to plug in at night and have 12 hours of charging at a level 2, which gets us back up to that 80, 90%. So going out and spending, tens of thousands of dollars, or, in some of the larger level 3s, hundreds of thousands of dollars for those chargers, is incredibly financially wasteful, I think, if it's not meeting your core business guidelines. Now, we did put in a level 3 charger, but that was a public and outward-facing type of charger, so that if there are cottagers that are coming through, I'm not sure if anybody in this room has been to Curve Lake, Ontario, but we've got a very active gas and cigarettes type of businesses that are located on reserve. So we have a lot of people coming in for their weekly gas and so on and so forth. But we're also right in the middle of cottage belt. So on a Friday afternoon, you can have 150 cars lined up waiting to fill up for fuel, or at the stop signs trying to get to their cottages. So we put in the level 3 charger for those people that may need a little bit of a top up to get to their destination. But I will say that, if and when you are thinking about installing EV chargers in your community, in your facility, you really need to delve down and take a really strong look at, what is my use case? What do I really need? Am I able to charge every night? Perfect. Level 2s all day long. Don't go out and spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on a level 3 charger when you know that you can get away with having a level 2 because you've got 12 hours of charge.
That's a really excellent point for a business case. I'll also add the additional kind of details about one thing you mentioned was it'll get you back up to the 80, 90%. And so for those of you who are not as familiar yet with EVs, that's actually your goal. Your goal is not to get to 100%, and it's not, I think it's, don't go below 10, I believe it is, 10 or 20? 10 or 20?
I've hit 3 or 4% once or twice,
but yeah.
I don't recommend that either.
But that serves to actually protect your battery and your longevity of the investment in the EV. And so this brings up another kind of great point about level 2 chargers, is that they are actually what's recommended by manufacturers for maintaining your vehicle battery and longevity. So if you're thinking about, again, your needs, whether they be business needs or personal needs for your EVs, the level 2 chargers in many, many use cases will be the best to serve your needs. There are, again, some cases for level 3s, but you also want to kind of consider your power grid, the ongoing operation costs, the ongoing maintenance costs, because level 2 chargers, they're more cost effective when you kind of consider your purchase, your installation, your maintenance, your operations. That's a lot of different levels of savings for something that in many, many cases will meet your needs. So, and this is one of the great features about the Charge for Change program. It is really focusing on bringing level 2 chargers to communities and municipalities. Emilie, maybe you could share a little bit more about the actual program and some of the details, feature details about the program for folks that are interested in learning more.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start the presentation now. I'll skip those first slides because it's what I just talked about in the first part of this conversation. But I wanted to highlight more of what is the goal of the program. And so the goal is really to fund electric vehicle charging installations in underserved communities. And so that means communities that currently don't have any EV chargers or have very little EV charging opportunities. And the program focuses on rural communities specifically, like in terms of municipalities, we're focusing on municipalities that have less than 100,000 residents, and indigenous communities as well. And so what's good to know about the program is that there is $750,000 available per year for the program, and each community can ask for a maximum of $125,000, which is what we've seen like running the first 2 years of the program. That's approximately the cost of implementing 4 plugs in your community. So that's the cap for how much community can ask for. But what's great about the program is that 100% of the project costs are covered. So the community will not have to pay for anything. We can get into it a little bit later, but there are different eligible costs that are taken into account for the program. But 100% of the project costs are covered. And so with that, if we do the math, it means that at least 6 communities can be selected to receive funding. And it actually can be more than that if the project costs are lower. And it has been the case for the first 2 years of the program that we were able to allocate funds to more communities than the 6 that you can see on the screen here. So that's that. Then we dive into the eligibility criteria. Can I dive
absolutely.
into this right now?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
So I did touch a little bit about the eligibility criteria for the applicants. So municipalities, indigenous communities. If you don't have an EV charger in your community right now, as I was saying, you're eligible to the program. If you have some EV chargers already, there is a little bit of math that is involved there, as the ratio of residents per plugs needs to be higher than the provincial average, and you have those numbers there. So it is a little bit of math. It is a little bit heavy, but if you have questions now or later, I'm here to help you with that. And it's actually the most common question that people come to me with, like, what is my ratio? Is this correct? Can you help me? So that's not a problem at all. And then there are some project requirements as well, and it's when we go back to the importance of having the chargers for the communities themselves. So the chargers have to be built in public places or on-street parking. If you have multi-unit residential buildings, having the chargers close to those residences are very helpful. Because we know that 80% of the charges happen at home. So, and we know that those buildings with several apartments, not everyone can charge their car in their home directly. So having public charging here is important. And we do include workplaces as well, because as Zach was saying, it takes longer to charge, but we all spend 7, 8, maybe 9 hours at work. And so if you travel from a different community to work, you will know that you can charge your car at your place of employment. We touched upon the level 2 chargers. There is a minimum of 4 plugs that need to be included in the project, but as I said, the project costs are covered for that. And then, as you can see on the pictures, there is some branding that goes on the chargers themselves. But yeah, that's about it for the eligibility criteria. And I just want to check. Oh yeah, this is about the timeline for the program. So right now the program is open to receive applications until February 20th. That Then we'll go into an evaluation period to review all the applications that we've received, and we'll make an announcement during the week of April 14th. And after that, we'll let the communities, work on their projects. I am in touch with all the communities that receive funding every month, just to connect on how the project is going, if there's any support that they need from me. So that's what we do. And then when it comes to the funds distribution, the timelines are kind of concurrent. I do want to highlight that we know that for smaller communities, it is sometimes a challenge to provide money up front to pay for the costs of the projects. So the fund distribution happens in several installments. There is a first installment, 30% of the funding, that is done upon the signature of the funding agreement with Earth Day Canada. Then there is another 30% that it happens during construction, and the final 40% is distributed when the project is completed. It is done in 3 installments. In my experience, it's usually more in 2 installments, like the first one, and then when the project is completed, because we do need invoices and proof of payments to kind of unlock the next installments, and usually, it happens that everything is done when the project is completed. So that's about that for the timeline. And then maybe finally, I'll go over the application process. So it is a 2-part process. There is a form online that can be filled with general information about your community, information about the project that you want to undertake, the sites that you want to include, and then and the funding as well. And then once you've submitted the form, we do ask for supporting documents, like with a detailed project budget, quotes from contractors that you will be working with, photos of the sites, if you want to include Google Map links so we can see the sites, with like the 3D viewing. That will help like the evaluating committee as well to review all of that. So yeah, that's the program in a nutshell. So we'll stick to the question for the end, but yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much. Okay, so you mentioned something very interesting. Did you say about $125,000 was the average for 4 level 2 charging connectors?
So it's been what I've noticed. I guess I would need to check my numbers, but I know that from the first year that I ran the program, most of the communities that submitted projects, like their budget was around $125,000. So I can double check how many chargers were included. But yeah.
Okay, so to give out all of you some perspective on that, in Charge Up, it's a fabulous program as well, but I do want to give you an idea of, I'm going to say how generous this program is. Each level 2 connector is eligible for up to $7,500. So if we're funding 4, the maximum is $30,000 through Charge Up. So that lets me know right away that more than likely, I know you said you didn't get quite into the details of what are the eligible costs, but my guess is that it's fairly comprehensive, that maybe there's some feasibility included in there.
Yeah, so if we dive into the eligible costs, obviously you have like all your capital expenses, the chargers, all the material that you will use for the project, all the contractors that you will work with, that those costs are covered as well. If you have people from the administration of your community managing the project, those costs are covered as well. And if you feel like your community right now doesn't have the capacity to take on such a project, you can work with an external organization that can help with the application as well as the project management, and the costs of working with those external organizations are also covered by by the program. So it is very, comprehensive.
That's really wonderful. And also another point that you brought up was about the phased funding. And this is something that we've received feedback about extensively from all the communities that I've connected with around the Charge Up program. And again, no shade whatsoever to Enercan's Zevet program. It's a wonderful program. But this is one of the nice things about having different types of funding streams is that they will offer different benefits. Like I know that this is not open to businesses, but Charge Up is open to businesses. So there are pros and cons to every single funding stream. It's really what are the pros for your needs, for your situation. And so that phased funding, I think that would be really helpful to make it more accessible because, Zach, you can attest, funding it, coming up at the capital or that financing piece, planning ahead in your budget. And I do know there are some other folks in the room who have worked on these projects and who are working on these projects and looking at this, and they know that that's a major barrier. So, kudos to the Charge for Change program for really addressing that barrier. And Zach, I wonder, with your extensive project management experience, going through navigating the funding, going through finding the partners, can you share anything, maybe some questions that you get or things that you wish you had known in advance with the folks here today?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things that we learned was that we were kind of in a unique situation where we knew, because we put the level 3 charger in, and maybe I should have covered this earlier, is when you put a level 3 charger in, you're automatically doing infrastructure upgrades to your facility. So that means increase transformers from your local distribution company, a bigger panel, distribution blocks. Your breakers become absorbently expensive because you get into those commercial levels of infrastructure. To give you an example, one 200 amp breaker that feeds our level 3 charger was $2,500. Just the breaker alone was $2,500. So the capital costs on those larger chargers become exceedingly more expensive than, you can go to Home Depot and get a breaker for your house and it's $35 kind of thing, right? So a massive shift in terms of capital. But the one thing I would say is talk to your local distribution company first, whether that's Hydro One, BC Hydro, Fortis, wherever you come from. Talk to those people first because we had to do significant infrastructure upgrades in our facility from the local distribution company. And that process took 9 months to do. At least speaking from a Hydro One perspective, you have what's called an NCCI, which is basically a load calculation that goes into planning and distribution pieces to say, okay, can we distribute an extra 200 amps, 3-phase, 120 kilowatts to this facility through these lines and so on and so forth. The other part is understanding that once you get over those larger scale commercial applications, is you have to go through what is called plan review from the Electrical Safety Authority as well, which is another kind of regulatory approval process. And we found that piece out not in the 11th hour, like 11:59. We kind of figured that piece out. Luckily, luckily we have a great relationship with our electrical safety inspector who services our area, and he gave us a little bit of insight and coaching, I suppose, to get that finished. Usually it takes. They were telling me 6 weeks to accommodate this type of thing, and we managed to turn it around in 2. But it was, and when you're talking about level 3s, as I said, everything is substantially more expensive. The charger alone that we purchased was $75,000 just right out of the gate, and that's you know, you can go up from there to $300,000 for some of these 350 kilowatts, the 180s, the 250s. They get very, very expensive very, very quickly. So as a business owner, when you've outlaid a lot of capital and all of a sudden somebody's throwing a wrench into the mix saying you've got another regulatory piece going on, it becomes very scary. So I would encourage everyone, do your due diligence beforehand. A project will go substantially faster if you engage with your local distribution company first. Make sure that you're meeting all of your ESA requirements. Just choosing a good contractor that really knows what they're doing as well will make your life a lot easier, because the charge up program is a you know, pay up front first and then you get reimbursed. So it can be very, very costly for the company or the community until you finish that project. And adding an extra 6 weeks isn't fun.
Yeah, well, I have to say that Zach's projects were some of the smoothest as well. So one of the pieces that you just mentioned is building that relationship with some different key folks there. Do you have any other advice that got you personally through some of those different challenges? It sounds like a lot of fortitude, but any, you know, sense of humor? Did you anything that you'd recommend for folks who this can be an intimidating process? I mean,
Absolutely.
it is a necessary one for most communities. You're not going to be able to rely on a nearby municipality for all of your needs, but what would you recommend to kind of keep your spirits up and know that, you know, you're going to get to that good news story soon?
Yeah, I mean,
To put you on the spot completely.
that's a tough one, because we as an organization set this policy that we need to be as environmentally friendly as possible through our entire business lines, whether that from the way that we're manufacturing to the way that we're distributing and managing shipping and logistics. So I would say for us, it was always part of our core DNA as a company. Just having Charge Up there to help support that as well was immensely great for us. So we kind of always knew we were going to go down that particular route. Were we going to do it this quickly? Probably not. But the funding was there. And when you're in it, it's just kind of, you don't really have time to worry. You're just kind of ticking off boxes, and sometimes you don't know what those boxes are that are coming around the corner. It was very much a figure it out as we go type of. Maybe you don't want to hear this, but
No.
it very was a. We don't really know what we're doing. My father is a journeyman electrician, so we have maybe a little bit better of an understanding of how the electrical process works. But I don't know anybody who's installed a level 2 or a level 3 charger personally.
Yeah.
So we had to do a lot of figuring that kind of stuff out as we go. And as I said, we had a really great relationship with our Electrical Safety Authority representative, and we were able to call on them and ask, what is the code? What is required? How do you go about this? What would you recommend? If you were coming to our facility, what would that look like for you? And then building it that way. So that was one of those things. One of the big things I'll always say is you're at the mercy of your local distribution company and ESA. So don't piss them off.
Good advice.
You have to, yes sir, yes ma'am, whatever you need to do, make sure that they feel like they're the kings of the world, because they are in these situations. Hydro One can drag their heels if they really wanted to and focus on other projects. And ESA, you say one bad thing and all of a sudden you've got a mark over there, and it becomes incredibly, incredibly hard to move through those processes. So as much as you can, keep those people on your good side.
Awesome. Okay, so relationships. Stick to your values at your core, and be open to that traditional learning as you go. That sounds great.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I mean, we got battered and bruised in some of these projects, but I think that's the way you have to learn in business is, you know that the mistakes you're going to make are going to come about, but how do you rectify those was key to the success of this business. So
Wonderful.
maybe I'm just a little bit hard-headed than most. I'm sure if you asked my mother, she would agree with that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that. And on that note, I'd like to actually get into some good news stories quickly, if we can, some positive outcomes, and then into some questions. So I don't know, Emily, you've had the opportunity now to see several of these projects go through to fruition. Do you have any stories that you can share about some of the impacts and outcomes that having these chargers in communities has had on the community members? And
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I have three stories in mind actually. The first one is like the municipality of East Ferris. Having the chargers, participating in the program and installing the chargers, open the doors for them to like start an EV fleet for their administration, and so yeah, having the infrastructure really opens doors. And then another story that I want to mention is the municipality of Thessalon. It kind of brought people from outside their community to stay and like spend time at local accommodations, restaurants, businesses, amenities that the community has to offer. And so it can also help with economic development for that. And the people, they were traveling from British Columbia, and they said that they wouldn't have stopped in their community if it hadn't been for the EV chargers. So it can also bring this opportunity to the community. And finally, more on the individual level, the Prince Edward County, the person that actually worked on the EV project for the municipality, by working on the project, understanding the infrastructure, also understanding more about EVs. We had an inauguration event, and the awareness organization Plug and Drive was here, and she was able to test drive an EV, and just doing that for her, she really felt a lot more comfortable switching from a regular car to an EV. So really doing all of this can really open doors for the community at different levels.
thank you so much. And actually, you mentioned Plug and Drive. We have a fantastic ambassador from Plug and Drive here today. Mary Mellon, will you stand up, please? And I just want you to know that Mary will change your life in 2 minutes. Not to put too much pressure, but Mary has such a wealth of knowledge and is so passionate about teaching about EVs that please take a moment to visit her at the Plug and Drive booth that's in the market hall, or snatch her here on the side afterwards if you have a chance. She's very lovely to chat with and has so much information. And I do understand she also has some level 2 EV chargers that she's giving away. So please, if there's some interest, have a quick chat with her or a long chat with her if you have an opportunity. She's fantastic. Zach, I know that you have had some unexpected outcomes from incorporating the zero-emission vehicle as part of your supply chain. Are you able to share a little bit of the positive outcomes that you've experienced so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big ones, as I briefly touched upon there, is expense reduction. If you're talking about filling up an F-150 Lightning for $150 and going down to $15, that's automatically going to make a measurable change in the expenditures in your business. And multiply that when you get into fleets of 10, 20, 30, all of a sudden you're seeing step changes, multiple step changes in terms of your expenditures. We also own and operate a supply business that supplies to the Canadian nuclear industry as well. And there is a significant amount of companies that also have ESG portfolios that they have to meet, targets that they have to meet. And I guess one of the big things that we didn't recognize coming out of this program or in this program in the beginning was the amount of value that an organization like AtkinsRéalis or Canada Reactors, the Canadian Nuclear Society, places on having their supply and delivery managed by an electric fleet. That is a big win in their eyes, and something that allows us to continue to create a good news story there. The other part is as a business, you become more competitive because you know, we're doing cutting lubricants right now so AtkinsRéalis, for the small medium reactors that are being built, they do all of their tooling and fixturing in-house. So if they need a support stand or something like that, they'll draw it up, they'll design it, they'll cut it and make their own piece. When we're talking about oils, I mean, all you have to look at is Esso, Shell, and all of those types of things, because they're all oils or fuels at some point. You're all within a few cents of each other, right, when you're talking about oils or something along those lines. So the margins on those are incredibly thin. But if you can reduce your expenditure on that, all of a sudden your margins become bigger and you can be more competitive for your clients as well. So you're also hitting that ESG component, but you're also increasing your margins as a business. And anytime you can pass on some cost savings to a client is going to be immeasurably better in terms of a long-term relationship. So that was one of the big things that we saw from our business as implementing an entirely electric vehicle fleet. We don't own in personal use and in business use, we don't own an internal combustion engine anymore.
Well, congratulations. I think that deserves a bit of a round of applause. Thank you both so much. I want to have an opportunity to connect with our beautiful audience here. So I'm wondering if I can open up to the floor to any questions that anybody might have for either of our guests. Yes, Tommy. Woohoo, Tommy.
Hi, my name is Tommy Thomas. I have a few questions. First of all, thank you for the presentation and great information. Will this program be available for a few years? That's my first question. And my second question is, with the hybrid vehicle be included in the charging stations as well? Because we're looking at EVs, but also hybrid. So that's one of our questions. And would you also include training on the installation and maintenance of the charging stations? And do you also have contacts for suppliers for us to acquire quotations?
Great questions, Tom.
Great questions. Yes, I might ask you to repeat them, but I'll take them one at a time. So for your first question about the program is running right now. We are in conversations of like maintaining it for another few years. So yeah, that's in discussions right now. As soon as I have the information, it'll be made publicly available. So that's for that question. Then about your question about hybrid vehicles, I'm not sure. Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. We're looking at conducting research in our community about which is the best technology to use, either EVs or hybrids. Because we're being told now that hybrids in the cold climate conditions are more durable. So that's the kind of research we're planning to do in our community in the next few years, working with Ministry of Transport of Quebec. So that's my question is basically, would the charging stations be able to charge these hybrid vehicles, or is it a different charging station?
Yeah, it would be the same.
Yeah, from an architecture standpoint, if it is a battery electric vehicle, a plug-in electric vehicle, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, or just a hybrid electric vehicle, basically what has happened across industry, bar Tesla, is that it's a standard J1172 charge plug. Now there are a number of automakers like General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, so Dodge and all of those companies are moving to the NACS or the Tesla plug in the coming years. But you can get adapters that will go from Tesla to CCS or J1172. So from an architecture standpoint, any vehicle that you buy now will have either of those two plugs, and you'll be able to charge without issue.
Just to clarify also, Tommy is here all the way from Inukjuak and is really exploring. He's a strong advocate for EVs and their application, and they're different, a whole entirely, different set of questions around that. Will this work in my community? Then folks in Toronto have to deal with. And so maybe this kind of can go back quickly to the question about some of the eligible costs. Are any kind of feasibility costs eligible as part of the program?
So I don't have all the details in mind. I can double check. I believe they are, but I can definitely double check for you and come back to you. Since we're going back to the eligibility, the costs, I want to mention as well that for the budget, we do highly recommend to include a 10% contingency plan from your project budget that you mentioned to avoid
10 isn't enough.
I know.
But I understand.
But we have to set the bar
Yeah,
somewhere.
no, I know.
But to manage any unexpected costs. So I just wanted to mention that again. And I'll get back to you for the feasibility study, but I'm 80% sure that they can be done.
I'm going to go ahead and ask another question that's connected to, sorry, I love the engagement. I see some hands up, but I just want to double check as well. So one of the other bits of flexibility that I think the program has is that, with ChargeUp, I know it's your reimbursement amount is maxed out per type of charger. Now, given if you're in a remote community and the costs are so much higher, to ship all of the equipment out, to bring in electricians or the specialty folks who might be doing some of that training or whatnot. Is there flexibility with this project in and of itself, because of its location, costs significantly more? Maybe they have maybe they reduce some of the number of charging units, but maybe you still hit the same amount. Is there flexibility there like that? Do you know what I mean?
So you mean, there is the minimum of 4 plugs for the project,
yeah.
But then within, because the project costs are divided into several categories, and if you don't use all of the the money that you had projected for one category, you can definitely use that for another category. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, so there may be some more flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's also another excellent program feature, and kudos again to Aviva Canada, Charge for Change, Earth Day Canada, for that. Now, okay, so I'm not sure the order here, but I have a question right here. Ron.
Yeah, so my name's Rhonda Henry. I work for Collier's Project Leaders, so I actually do know people who project manage installing these things. We're doing the bus fleet in Halifax. On the project management side of the business, I work in infrastructure advisory. One of my jobs is to help communities, municipalities, not-for-profits to get funding for these things. So I'm wondering, with both of these programs, what we always try to do is stack funding sources. Is there any barrier to that? Can I get your funding for a community along with some provincial funding, along with some federal funding, and then they would be able to maximize the amount of cash that they get to be able to pay for this?
So at the moment, the Charge for Change program is not stackable with another program as in that sense. I mean, obviously, if you're applying to different sources of funding and you get funding from both, you can and you're working with the same providers, you can run these projects in parallel. That's the case for some of the communities I work with, but at the moment it's not, and that's a question that's been recurring. So I think I will definitely take this one back and think more on that and see how maybe that's something that we can yeah, support communities better with that.
Well, I would offer, so for the, oops, sorry, forgive me, for the program that I run, Charge Up, I would add that we had this discussion at the beginning of, when we first met, but there wasn't really a need to stack with the Charge for Change program because they are so comprehensively funding the project. For Charge Up, it is run through NRCan ZEVIP program, so the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program, and so it's not stackable with any other ZEVIP programs. So we have that limitation. It's the same pot of money, so it is stackable with provincial funds and other private funds. We don't have a restriction on that. Most of our program applicants have it's more so they've had a challenge in finding the other programs that are stackable, not so much with Charge Up, if that answers a little bit more. And then, sorry.
So just really quickly, because I want to, one of the things is how communities can pay us to help them to navigate this process. So would like consulting fees be eligible under either program? You said you'll check on feasibility, and that's
Yeah.
often a big piece of it, but sometimes, just even the cost of retaining colliers to undertake the application for them is something that they would want to have covered.
That's a really great question. So I would say for Charge Up, what we found is even though there are eligible, there is an eligible cost where that could be covered. Most of the time, the project is already hitting its max before you can actually get to that. But through the Zero Emission Vehicle Awareness Initiatives of Across the Land that we're working on, there's potential to have mentorship. We're looking at mentorship to assist with some applications. And so that's kind of in the works now, so perhaps we can chat a little bit more and to see if perhaps that could be something where the services could be considered as like a technical service professional provider that we could incorporate somehow, because I do know that is a big piece that can be a barrier for communities. So let's have a conversation after and see if we can figure something out to help support.
I think the gentleman at the back with the glasses was next.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Well, first of all, Tom, I'm not from this region, but I'm from the far west, above the Arctic Circle, in Newbig area.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the challenges that I think we all have in the Arctic is a good example. Yesterday was -40 in Fort McPherson. And when you're talking about infrastructure, you've got to address those issues. You simply cannot build as though you're in downtown Toronto or in southern Canada and think all of those things are the same. What I would suggest maybe is to think seriously about, particularly when you're shifting to the Arctic communities, the idea of modular systems. In other words, building a modular system so that you can take it into the communities and install it accordingly. It'll obviously lead to, fit the requirements because that's part of the design of the building.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that because of the weather conditions, it's not always easy to simply go and plug in on an outdoor unit. Depending on some kind of computer
Mm-hmm.
component to it so that people can utilize that on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would suggest that. The other thing that I would suggest, and I don't know, the team would say this, but I think part of the conversation that needs to also be part of it is the idea of a bit of research and assessment through the project so that over time you get a real good sense of what is going to work and what can't work. And if the changes need to happen, then they should happen. this whole issue of EVs, you raised it earlier on the economic side. It could be, for those, unfortunately, there are communities that don't have road systems. But for those that have road systems, particularly in northern communities, it's a good opportunity, and I say that colleague Grant Sullivan is there, but we're part of the Densfer Highway, and you're talking about a road going all the way to the Arctic Ocean. And if you want to change the way people utilize tourism, the economic opportunities, we got to think, well, how do we make that interconnectivity so that the service and support is given from the south all the way to the Arctic Ocean. And it will eventually probably be a consideration in other parts of the Arctic communities. That time will come. But at the same time, the opportunity is here to utilize that support. The other thing that I would suggest is that if we're talking about the idea of reducing diesel use in communities, solar energy and other clean energy alternatives need to be a consideration of how you interconnect those other energy sources to those facilities as well.
I
Just-
want to
Go ahead.
I want to say thank you so much. I know that they're not questions, but actually, this feedback is something that we're constantly seeking. And I have the privilege of actually sharing in many different opportunities. I have many different opportunities where I'm working with different levels of government just because of my role. And I'm often not speaking for myself. I'm sharing this type of feedback. Some of the points you've made, I made last week when I was sitting with the Fraser Basin Council, group that's leading a lot of work in BC, along with the provincial government. And so I want to say thank you so much for that. We also have, we have a survey that's out and open that is for the Zebs Across the Land program. It's still available, and it's my way of attempting to gather some more information. So if any of you would still like to fill out that survey, I've decided not to close that survey. I want to hear from you. I want to be able to bring your ideas and your insights into all those spaces. And as I have the opportunity to speak on panels, I'm often reaching out to folks who have that experience, and I encourage, we had Tommy actually joined a panel with me very last minute on this, a little bit on the spot at the Electric Autonomy EV Expo. And some of Tommy's insights about what having EVs in his community would mean, which I think some of the most profound offerings at that whole conference, huge conference. So I want, just personally, you have a lot of great insights, and forgive me, I don't think we've met, and your name tag is turned over, but I would love to chat with you afterwards and make sure I have your contact information so that when these opportunities to share insights or speak on panels, perhaps you could bring your voice and your insights into those spaces if you would be open to it.
Yeah, and just building on that from a corporate perspective, if I could give a small little pitch, we've actually developed a rapidly deployable solar-powered EV charger that we are testing with York University here in Markham, and that will be deployed March of this year. So it's a shipping container with a battery energy storage located in it, and one of our solar modules installed on top, and it can be. It's a complete standalone unit. So when you talk about standalone units, we are actively working on that. We're going through the testing programs, and we'd love to test in the north as well.
Wonderful, awesome. I know we're, I think, a little bit over time, but I don't think, I think we could possibly take one more question if possible.
Zach, you mentioned something that I think is I don't think you punctuated it enough about your business case use for EV chargers and how important that decision is. I think that's such a critical decision because, like you said, you have level 2s, you have level 3s, and it's what are you going to use it for?
Yeah.
And and for your program, sorry, all of which you guys are giving suggestions.
I love it. No, I love it. This is amazing.
Right, so.
Yes.
And I think like I've traveled from Vancouver all the way to Whitehorse twice now. And I'm happy to say like the Yukon is actually, in terms per capita, is the third largest adopters of EVs in Canada. And BC is number 1. And I think that's one of the big reasons, like we are now an electrified highway between the 2 territories and provinces. It's the only one in Canada that's actually done that, which is pretty amazing, with fast chargers. And through that experience of going back and forth, it's really disappointing to hear that businesses are not available for this, because where I think the need is level 2s need to be at hotels. Because it's exactly to your point about what are you trying to do? Okay, I'm traveling from Vancouver to Whitehorse. Where do I have to stay? I have to stay at a hotel. This is now a safety issue. So I traveled up this route with my girlfriend, and I had to go plug in at a level 2 charger in a community, and then I had to walk back to the hotel.
Yeah.
And I rolled in at midnight, and she said, I would never do this. I would never do this. I've never been to this community. I don't know what's going on. I know that's where I'm staying. Like, it's really important, the location of these things.
You're absolutely right, and I have been in that exact same, it's 11:30 at night.
Yep.
You're
at 9%, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. And oftentimes now, like I'll book a hotel, my first call is to that hotel. Do you have an EV charger? Is it available? Is it working? And there are some times where you don't, when you get there and somebody else is charging. And that happens in downtown Toronto as well. Like, we're not talking, I came into the city a couple weeks ago and I told the bell guy, hey, this truck needs to charge because I got to go somewhere the next day. It didn't end up getting charged, and now you're kind of understanding how do I manage this state of charge, because I can't go to the local Shell and spend 4 minutes filling my vehicle up. It takes at Electrify Canada 90 minutes kind of thing, right? So it does add some nuances as well, and that's really why we developed those rapidly deployable EV chargers with solar, is because we can drop that anywhere. We don't need grid connect, we don't need anything, and it allows for, because we're built on an aging architecture of electrical distribution in this country as well, and just because you have maybe a 200 amp service at your hotel or your house or whatever, doesn't mean that's not taken up by electric baseboard heater, dryers, hot water tank, your electric stove, and all of those types of things. So putting another 40 or 80 amps of charging on top of that is really getting close to that 80% maximum of your EV charger. So plus the infrastructure is the most expensive part. It's not the installation that's the expensive part. It's the substations, it's the transformers, it's the cabling, it's the chargers, it's all of those types of things. So we've chosen to standardize all of that so that, one, the proponents don't have to go out and say, yeah, great, I've got a charger now, how do I actually use it? We just, a complete standalone unit that you can drop in and go.
Wonderful.
And if I can just say, I wanted to thank you both for your comments, because this is definitely the type of feedback that we're looking for to improve the program and try to support more communities. So I was taking a lot of notes on my phone as you guys were talking, and I will make sure to bring them to the discussion and see where we can take the program. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you to the audience, and thank you again to our wonderful panelists. I think it's time for lunch, and again, my name is Jessica Tate. Please don't hesitate to come and connect with me afterwards. Always happy to set a meeting as well if you want to take this conversation further. You've just been wonderful, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to share the space with you all.
Thank you.